now. Wonderful. Judges, can you please introduce yourselves?
Good morning. My name is Ed Philpott. I am currently sitting in my office in central New Hampshire. I am a trial lawyer with a statewide practice, and this is my third year judging the We the People competition. How about Michael?
Morning. I think I'm unmuted. Yes. Michael Anderson here, Dr. Anderson. I am a retired professor, retired college administrator, and I'm currently living in northern Minnesota, and I work with Native American kids in the public schools. This is my 16th national finals.
Good morning. My name is Molly Russell. I'm an attorney with Legal Aid of West Virginia, and I specialize in domestic violence law. This is my first national contest.
And why don't we hear who you all are?
Hi, my name is Abel DeBerry, and I'm a junior at Easthampton High School.
Good morning. My name is Madeline Moynihan, and I'm a senior at Easthampton High School.
Hello, I'm Nora Derwitter. I'm a senior at Easthampton High School, and this is our wonderful teacher, Miss Kelly Brown, and we are representing Massachusetts.
Thank you. We are Unit 4. Unit 4. How have the values and principles embodied in the Constitution shaped American institutions and practices? Question 2. Members of Congress are not only legislators, but they, quote, are also inquisitorial and should meet frequently to inspect the conduct of public officers, close quote. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its investigatory power? Explain the differences, if any, between Congress's power to investigate and the power of oversight. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its oversight powers?
The inherent powers of investigation and oversight are essential elements of the legislative powers. The power of investigation was first asserted in 1792 when the House of Representatives investigated the defeat of General Arthur St. Clair in the Northwest Territory. In Sinclair v. U.S. and McGrain v. Doherty, the Supreme Court further defined the extent of investigation. Over time, Congress has used this power to investigate government officials, the military, private businesses, and foreign agents. While Congress cannot issue bills of attainder, they can subpoena individuals and evidence, arrest and detain those who refuse, and produce findings in the efforts of creating and overseeing laws.
The power of investigation is the basis for important legislative changes, as seen in the Church Committee investigations. While congressional investigations are a function of the legislative process, they are most effective in their ability to harness attention from the general public, as well as gather substantial evidence for other governmental bodies to bring about real lawsuits. For example, a recent investigation into big tech exposed their monopolistic powers to the public. It sparked discussion about reining in these companies' powers through antitrust regulations, but also pushed the companies to make changes on their own to satisfy their customers.
Though Congress's power to investigate and power of oversight both stem from the inherent powers of the legislature, they slightly differ in purpose. The power of oversight exists to monitor the president and different federal programs or agencies in the executive branch and to confirm they are faithfully executing the law as intended by Congress. The power of investigation is one important tool in that process. Both powers are intended to help legislatures create better laws and serve as an important check on the executive branch. Investigations have been used to unveil misconduct by the executive branch, including the Teapot Dome, Watergate, and Iran-Contra scandals. Oversight differs from investigation as it is intended to be an ongoing process that is more focused on the effectiveness of law rather than alleged wrongdoing. Most scholars, from David Adler to Lance Cole, agree that Congress could more effectively use their oversight power, but that it is harder work, and Congress members are less likely to spend their time on work that is not going to give them the media attention that their campaigns demand.
The successful use of congressional oversight has ebbed and flowed over time. During the Cold War in the 1950s, The Red Scare McCarthy hearings tainted the views of investigations, but other investigations like the Church Committee's findings about American intelligence shows its importance in bringing sunlight to the misdeeds of the CIA, including foreign coups and domestic surveillance.
Day-to-day oversight by Congress has diminished significantly in the last 20 years, threatening our system of checks and balances in 3 ways. First, Congress has deferred heavily to the presidency on issues of war. They never invoke the War Powers Act as a body, and often investigation into presidential military action has become a partisan attack or is stonewalled by the executive branch. Second, as the federal lawmaking powers have expanded over the last 50 years, Congress has created a massive set of executive agencies to work out the details of complex laws regulating highly technical areas. As a result, Congress has let those agencies run almost unchecked, trusting the expertise of over 2 million bureaucrats.
Third, growing partisanship in the last 40 years has weakened the barrier between branches. These are troubling tendencies because they fail to uphold proper checks on the executive branch. According to former Congressman Lee Hamilton, regular oversight throws light on the activities of government. It can protect the country from an imperial presidency, from bureaucratic arrogance, and from the regulations that do more harm than good. Strong congressional oversight, in other words, is essential to the functioning of our democracy. We agree. Thank you. We're ready for your questions.
So is it working currently? Congressional oversight?
Could you repeat that question? It cut out for me.
Is it working? Is congressional oversight currently working the way it's supposed to?
No, I don't believe that it is. Over the past many years, congressional oversight has declined significantly, mostly because oversight is a lot of work that doesn't get a lot of media attention. It focuses more on the nitty-gritties of the executive branch. And so a lot of congressmen and women don't want to gain the research and educate themselves on what they have to do oversight hearings on. But we talked to Deputy Chief of Staff for Representative Ronnie Jackson, Mike Martin, and we talked about how a way to improve oversight would be creating rules for the process that create a minority buy-in to the hearings. And so this would be things like allowing the minority party to call in witnesses or subpoena witnesses to testify during these hearings, which would increase discourse and allow for bipartisan debate.
Though I do agree with my colleague, there are things that we can fix about the oversight and investigation processes as a whole. I think that depending on what we want to define as successful, it makes it's subjective as to whether it's effective or not. And many people may say or think that Congress should have to create further policy or further legislation in order for the oversight or investigation processes to be effective. But I think that the fact that this process brings sunlight to a lot of issues, that's effective enough for the people to put pressure on their governments and on agencies. We see this in investigation done on ICE last year by the House Committee on Homeland Security. It was revealed that ICE was not following CDC guidelines, and they were detaining medically vulnerable immigrants. And this information is accessible to the public. And because of that, the public is able to put pressure on agencies like ICE on issues that they're passionate about, which could later help in further legislation or policy.
I have to disagree with my teammate. I believe it's not nearly as effective as it could be. I believe if there was a set schedule for oversight investigations, a lot of things that have gone unchecked wouldn't be swept under the rug. I believe a lot of things would be brought into, like what my teammate said, sunlight. I believe a lot of things have been gone unchecked because it's only used during times of emergencies or times of crisis. And I believe if it was set on a schedule, a lot of things would be investigated that otherwise wouldn't be.
You're muted.
I know, I keep forgetting. Sorry. I have a question about the War Powers Act. You're citing that wisely as a process that legislature would like to see in place sometimes, but where and when in recent times do you think it should have been used?
I think recently the War Powers Act should be invoked in times where presidents use drone strikes in Middle Eastern countries. So we see this with President Obama's drone strike in Syria. It wasn't agreed to by Congress, and I feel like the War Powers Act needs to be strengthened so that we can't just bomb other countries without any say from Congress, because it is supposed to. A lot of these military actions are supposed to go through Congress, and so giving this power solely to the executive branch and Congress has no buy-in towards it, it can be very dangerous for both our countries and other countries that we inflict military conflict in.
So what does the War Powers Act do that would solve this drone issue, for example?
Well, the War Powers Act is supposed to, it was originally intended to rein in the president's war power, but over time it has just strengthened it. So because of our military technology and how much it's advanced, we can inflict war on other countries within days. Whereas when the War Powers Act was originally made in the early 1900s, our military technology was not nearly as strong and effective as it is today. So we have a lot more power now and can use it very quickly. And it can be very, very dangerous for other countries for us to have that power and it to not be checked by Congress.
Molly?
So I've been thinking about the executive agencies. You're talking about the executive agencies. Do you feel that there is an area, I know there's 15 executive agencies. Do you think that there's an area that is needed, or there's a certain area that's not covered? I know you had talked about technology and what's going on with that. Do you feel that that's an area that needs to have some oversight?
I think technology is a big area that needs to have more oversight. And we did see this recently with the big tech investigations where a lot of these technology companies were abusing their power over their customers. And so having hearings on it exposes these issues to the public, which can push the public to push Congress to enforce more legislation and new laws to protect people's privacy, which these companies were abusing.
I agree with Maddie that we should have more oversight in places of like technology, and this can be successful. And we see in California with the CCPA, now California can regulate what certain companies do with people's private information. And that's already a success that we have. And if we continue to conduct oversight on companies that we're iffy about using people's personal information, I think that we can go even further with this.
So let's link your technology examples with the notion of putting sunlight. I think your team talked about bringing sunlight to topics. I'm not sure I'm always going to be happy with putting sunlight on it. What else can they do? Yeah, we can see it, but then what should they do about it?
So Congress does have the ability to create new legislation that would not put the responsibility of shining sunlight on the public. Congress does have the ability to create privacy laws and to use executive agencies like the NSA, which would protect people's privacy more. Congress does have this ability, but they are kind of ineffective with it and leave it up to the public to just bring awareness to certain issues.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Samantha, before I forget, could you please join us in the judges' room when we're done with this hearing? So again, thank you. We're going to offer you some feedback now, and we're going to start with Michael because he's unmuted.
Speaking of technology, I need some
Speaking of
oversight.
technology.
I need oversight. When was the War Powers Act written? Does anybody remember? Wasn't it a Vietnam era thing? Was that? And does it say something like the president can go to war for 90 days and then after that it has to go to Congress? Good job bringing that up, by the way. It was highly applicable in this particular case. I think it was in 73 and something like that. Ed and you were alive then, but nobody else in this room was. So I guess that's way back in the 1900s.
Right.
I like the notion of shining sunshine. That's a really good way to express this. And I like your idea about minority buy-in, having some membership from the minority party when you're involved there. And in fact, you brought up a constitutional principle that I haven't thought about in a long time, bills of attainder, which, it's been a long time since we went through those parts of the Constitution. So thank you for bringing us some really good things. And thank you for citing David Adler. It's a good source. You did a nice job.
Molly?
So I wrote down the comment about, Congress doesn't really want to educate themselves when it comes to oversight. And all I could think of, and it pulls into that big tech issue of Mark Zuckerberg and them asking questions that were, if you know anything about tech, were absolutely mortifying. It was embarrassing. And so your point was so well taken because I could just picture it. I really liked how you interwove big tech into all of it. And that's why I asked a question further, like, where's this going to go? I think that's a really interesting modern issue that we don't really know what the resolution is, other than I agree that our Congress needs to educate themselves a little bit more. So overall, very nice job.
Effectiveness is subjective. I loved that. It is, and I think that not only was that a statement by your team, but that was sort of a theme that came out in response to the questions that I asked you. I was happy to have so many contemporary references. The historical references are great, and they tie together or perhaps better set the stage for what is happening now. But when we talk about congressional oversight in the context of this discussion we're having today, what's going on today is pretty important. And I like that the impression that I got from your position was that your team is guardedly optimistic that this can improve. So I want to thank you for a wonderful conversation, and I want to wish you the best of luck. And thank you for your job today. Well done.
Thank you all for being here.
We'd like to
Running the
congratulate
program.
the students today on a job well done and their effort. Congratulations.